everybody, today we're going to be talking about Beast Build. If you saw my previous video on Beast Build, then pretend you didn't and watch this one. Anyway, I think my previous video wasn't too clear in the thumbnail and the title as to the fact that it was actually a build video, and I think in reality it also was made a little bit too early and I couldn't exactly be too clear as to a lot of the mechanics with it. I played through the build again in another multiplayer game, and of course the build is quite overwhelming. I hope the thumbnail has me showing like 19 different summons. You can get many more than that, but that was like 19 in a multiplayer game. I was actually summoning more than the opposing player could kill, which was very funny to me. And once I played through it again, I figured I could make a much better build video on it, and I think this build is quite fun. Very fun. Pretty much everybody who's watched it is like, can I do that? How do I do that? That's really fun. And I thought to myself, okay, well, let's make another video then, be a lot more clear on what this video is, and importantly, let's actually be very clear as to the build in its totality. Now, of course, I am showing Giant King. If you want to play non-Giant King, if you want to play Champion, I think it's a little bit weaker, but it's definitely still doable. So as for the build itself, we're going to go through every little detail from it front to the end. I'm also going to show you the hero. In my last couple of videos, I was mostly doing Warrior. I think Warrior is a little basic. There's not really much room to screw up on a Warrior. Often you don't really do much different than other Warrior players. In my Undead Morale Bomb video, I should have specified I was taking Willbreaker on the Warrior for Vicious Killer and the AoE Remorseful and all that on Kill, so we could get AoE chain routes, because any unit that's routing reduces morale from other units that are routing, which is also going to be applicable here, by the way. So that's one thing I could have specified, but let's then talk about Beast Build. We're going to talk about form. Now, form is important, despite the fact that we might actually be playing a Frost Giant. That's because a lot of people don't know that Frost Giants, all Giants, take on your initial form traits. They actually do get these, and this makes it quite important for them. So we decided to go with Lupine here, not Orc, for once. Why did we decide to do that? Before we go any further, I always like to, I like to look at my clock here and remind myself. Do make sure to like, do make sure to subscribe, and do make sure to leave a comment down below. All three of these things help me immensely, which helps me make more of these videos. And if you like me going over in probably too much detail a build, and if you like this kind of, I like calling them the nerd podcast, we're going to keep calling them the nerd podcast, then it supports me a lot. Now, normally I always go Orc, but aesthetics are important. For any build, aesthetics are important. Don't think, like, for all these builds, I try them in multiplayer, and do in the comments, some of you guys think that these builds are made for multiplayer. No. Multiplayer builds in this game are good. Let me actually explain a difference here. When you play Total Warhammer 3 in particular, any build that you would do in multiplayer is often different than if you played it in single player, at least in like head-to-head formats, because you just play the game differently. But in Age of Wonders 4, there are very little / no real ways to exploit the game. If you play in multiplayer, you play the same way as if you play in single player. So if I say I tested a build in multiplayer, really what I'm saying is I made sure that this build is good and can compete against other people who are also doing good builds. So this is a good build. That means in particular, if you take this build out in single player, you will absolutely curb stomp the AI. So, you know, I guess also maybe be a little bit careful, because there has been a comment of some dude who was like, oh, I didn't really know how to make builds, and then I used one of yours and I did 10 trillion times better. And I'm like, yeah, that will happen if you don't know how to make builds. But anyway, let's talk about Lupine. Why did I go Lupine instead of Orc? Aesthetics. Important to me, important to you, because you want to look cool. If you're playing single player, if you're playing multiplayer, you want to look cool, right? Okay, so Lupines, particularly with the transformations that you will get in this build, are very cool looking. In the primal setup with the long loincloth, like, you could just see they end up looking amazing. And I think they end up looking better than Orcs with this. So aesthetically, I think Lupine works best with this build. But we decided to go, of course, with a Frost Giant variant. So what then form traits did we take? And I think there are two different paths here, but this one is best. We have quick reflexes, because this helps our Giant King not get sniped out really easy, because they will get sniped out really easy. Tough also helps our starting stack do a little bit better. Quick Reflex is tough. I've liked this combo. You will probably see this combo show up a lot, as I mention all the time when I do Quick Reflexes. If you're doing auto battle, or if you're even doing manual battle, it doesn't really matter, the enemy range units like to be accurate. So they will run up real close to you, and then you can easily annihilate them on your turn. It also makes them shoot less at you. Quick Reflexes isn't like 25% harder to hit. It often makes the enemies go from 2 attacks to 1 attack, and that 1 attack might not even be that accurate. So what I am saying is that Quick Reflexes obliterates enemy ranged units. Now, in particular, Quick Reflexes is really good on Giant King because he's a large target who is 20% easier to hit. So at the very least, this helps your Giant King not die horribly. Okay, so Quick Reflexes, I just like it. Helps your PvEing, helps your PvPing. Skirmisher builds are quite popular right now still. I think you can generally expect to fight, if you're doing like a 5 to 6 man free-for-all, you can generally fight like 1 skirmisher player, and those skirmisher players can be quite deadly. But do remind you, there's a beast build. These will not apply to your beasts. Beasts don't get traits. Kind of one of the biggest problems in non-racial units. They need to get quite harshly buffed, or else they will not, well, do much. So Quick Reflexes, tough, these are very good. Tough is very good in the early game because a lot of melee enemies will run up and hit you. And particularly in the Cold North, most Cold North enemies, because we will be going Primal Mammoth. You might have noticed that with the Frost Giant. A lot of them will do physical and frost damage on their hits. Tough reduces physical and frost damage, so that's quite good. Now we're also going to be going Cold-Blooded. Now, there's 2 ways we could go with this build, but Cold-Blooded in particular is, in my opinion, kind of needed, because we have no way in this build to deal with morale. Now, for those of you who think of the game and go, aha, well, you're wrong. What about Horned God? Yeah, all you need is a Golden Tree Wonder, and you can recruit, or I guess rally 1 Horned God into your stack. You don't even need to go with the Tome, which is true, by the way. If you do actually get the Golden Tree Wonder, you can just rally 1 Horned God into your stack, which would normally be amazing, because Shepherds of the Wild. Here's a problem. Shepherds of the Wild doesn't actually do anything. It says it gives them Fearless, which says they cannot lose morale. That's wrong. Despite the tooltip being like this, both in-game and on the wiki, in-game he does nothing for animals. I have asked around, and this is supposedly a balance decision that was made. Because it's still on the wiki and I haven't heard back from the developers, I don't know whether or not that's actually true. So take it with a grain of salt, I guess, is my point. At any rate, this does mean animals have currently no way to deal with morale, so Cold-Blooded. Now, why does Cold-Blooded help us if animals don't get traits? Because once we get to that tier 5 tome, where are you at here? Once we're at tier 5 tomes, all we need to do is we need to not have our leader pushed off the board, and we need to not have our leader routing. If our leader isn't routing and he's not pushed off the board, then we can be spamming mass rejuvenation every turn. Animals will come back to life with half morale, so that's totally fine. And if we go Tome of Paradise, we can of course go Enchanted Bloom, not Enchanted Bloom, Exhilarating Pollen. There we go, Exhilarating Pollen, which will give all friendly units 15 morale. So we have 2 different ways of dealing with morale for even our animal buddies, so long as we do not have our leader route off the board. So Cold-Blooded basically stops that. Cold-Blooded is a real hard counter to morale bombs. You would have to get hit by a lot of morale. Now, of course, in my previous video, I did talk about Stormcrow versus Glacial Mammoth. I have to say, I don't think it's really a competition right now. The devs have commented that they will rebalance liquids and plants, but as always, until it happens, it hasn't happened. So it could happen a year from now, 5 months from now, or it could just be canceled and not happen at all. So you just need to take that with a grain of salt. At either rate, in the current reality of the situation, liquids are so much stronger than plants that I think there is no competition. Glacial Mammoth stomps on Stormcrow. Nothing to say. Stormcrow is decent if you're trying to get Astral, but I just think Glacial Mammoth with the second Tome of Cryomancy. So we're not going to open Tome of Cryomancy, but we're going to go with second. That gives us Death Magic, I think on like turn 65, something like that. Once we do get Death Magic, of course, this allows us to spam our AoE Revive indefinitely, so we don't care, and it just gives a build some legs into the late game. So at any rate, I do think the Shadow version of the build beats the Astral version. It's painful to not have any Astral affinity, but you gotta give something up sometimes, right? Now, of course, Glacial Mammoth is quite good. I think that Glacial Mammoth is just outright amazing for a couple of reasons. Number one, you can see this 3 production per snow tile, and the Frost Giant can allow us to stack down that rune steel and spread snow tiles, even if a city isn't near a, whichever you call it, the beastal thingy, the little beastal pillar, totem? I don't know what you want to call it. So 3 production per pop is quite strong. This allows you to get outrageous amounts. Then the unique building, not shown here. Really wish they would show the unique buildings on the tooltip here. The unique building is a conduit that gives you, and I'm not exaggerating, 6 production per frost tile. So if you get 6 frost tiles adjacent to your unique conduit, that is 36 production. Eat your heart out. Anything Industrious can do. Glacial Mammoth has the most production of any build in the game. Period. Bar none. No one can compete. It's so blatantly above it. The only people who can get close are Industrious, and that's because they have cheaper buyouts and they can get lots of production and gold from their scouts. But even with that in mind, Glacial Mammoth is so much and so much per city that you can literally end most games, and I mean end, like turn 70, most of your cities will have nothing really left to build. So Glacial Mammoth's boon also got a buff here. It's unmentioned here, and it really should now be mentioned in the tooltip. Every time there's a problem with the tooltip, I will mention that because I think the devs are not updating their tooltips as much as they should be. And particularly when I was new to the game and learning, these really good tooltips were really good for that. So the more that they do not do their tooltips well, the more I think the game becomes harder to learn. Anyway, Glacial Mammoth's boon: anytime your frost effect is resisted, which will be the majority of the time, an enemy gets a status resistance, or I should say status vulnerability debuff. So if you are having a bunch of spiders, all with Glacial Mammoth's boon, all hitting enemies, you will be afflicting a lot of status vulnerability. Remember, each stack is -2, so if you were to hit an enemy 3 times, they get -6 status resist, which allows your spiders to web much easier, which allows your debuffs to just land much easier, and allows you to actually get this frozen much easier. So Glacial Mammoth's boom definitely is a bit stronger than it used to be in the past. I don't think there's a real competition as of this point. As I've played this build a lot, Glacial Mammoth is just way better. Stormcrow Grassland Walk is quite good, is quite insane. Moving through Grassland at 4 points instead of 6 allows them to use Grassland as a turbo road, which gives them outrageous movement speed. That's probably the biggest boon of Stormcrow. The mana isn't even their biggest boon, it's literally Grassland Walk. But even with that said, Arctic Walk is 5 points instead of 6 through snow, so you can move quite easily with this build. Now, the Giant himself will get 40 movement speed, but our regular units are going to be at 32 movement speed. The good spiders, and this gets a bit frustrating with animal builds. Let me just show you so you can see the annoyance here. A lot of animals have 32 movement speed, and then some of them have 48. Which ones have 40 movement speed and keep up with the Giant, and which ones have 32, you're just gonna have to learn. Most of the ones that are actually good coming out here at tier 2 are gonna have 40 movement speed. Ice Spider is 40, Elephant is 40. You will see a lot of elephants. It is like the most common spawn, I swear to God. You will, I don't know why, it just spawns nothing but elephants in the north. I didn't even know that elephants could survive in the north. I don't think there's a natural habitat on Earth where elephants spawn in the north. I don't think so. Where did they come from? Syria? North Africa, India. These are not cold locations. And yet, in this universe, elephants come out of the north nonstop. Polar bears are 40, so it doesn't really matter that our race is going to have 32 movement speed. You will get very high. Now, the one exception here, and this one's a bit frustrating. These little spider boys that you can actually build out of your SPI, which I'll get into later, have 32 movement speed. We will get into the frustration of that. At any rate, once you do the enchantment from this faction for all your units, all your spider boys, all those dudes, they will all get Arctic Walk. Now, I do believe the ice spiders get that by default, and most frozen units will get that by default, but giving Arctic Walk to elephants, who for some reason spawn in the north. Seriously, if anyone is actually watching this video on the development team, elephants literally can't live in cold climates, so elephants should not even be on the northern spawn list. That would also help reduce a lot of the RNG, because right now getting ice spiders is very difficult. Anyway, let's move on. Society traits. You're gonna be shocked to see I go Fabled Hunters. I'm shocked too. Fabled Hunters? Me? A man of my... Yes, we're going Fabled Hunters. Now, Fabled Hunters, I really, once again, wish the tooltips would say this. Fabled Hunters does apply to non-racial units. We're starting with a Giant King. Giant Kings don't have a heal. Champions have a 10 hit point heal. Now, that is the advantage of a champion. Giant King gives you like crazy buffs to everything. Champion gives you 2 XP per turn, which is really nice, and it gives you the 10 hit points healing. So champions still have an advantage, even into this build, particularly because this build's trying to level people up. So don't think that Champion versus Giant King is set in stone. While I do think Giant King is overall better, Champion actually is pretty competitive in this specific situation. Fabled Hunters, just outrageously good. Starting with that extra rage unit with Primal is like not starting with anything at all, because Primal Darters are terrible. But, you know, honestly, Fabled Hunters is still good regardless. 2 pretty strong buffs. Now, the second thing here, this did get bug fixed. Nature Affinity, Cultivators. What Cultivators used to do is, once you do get the Mark of Nature, I should describe this. Mark of Nature currently works really well with summons. Whenever you kill a unit, any unit on the entire board, be it a combat summon, a vine, anything, your entire board gets strengthened. And if any unit on the board dies, any unit with Mark of Nature gets Grace. I should specify 2 different things. Number 1, Mark of Nature only applies to real units. It doesn't apply to summons. The devs do seem to agree that if most, it's kind of random which summons, some did get it, it was kind of weird, but if summons in mass all got 3 stacks of Grace indefinitely, it would be quite overpowered. But what this build does do is allow you to get 3 Grace on the entire board for pretty much any of your real units, which is quite frustrating. It also allows you to start stacking Strengthened globally, which gives you a steamroll effect. Once you kill a couple units, even if they're combat summons, your entire board will quickly get 5 Strengthened, that's 50% more damage, and you just roll the enemies. So, does have a downside that the Mark of Nature won't apply to a lot of the summons. That's totally fine, we don't care, really good. Now, when I did say it got bug fixed, when it was released, it converted 50% of your food. Actually, I think it converted all bonus food into mana. It was really buggy. They have fixed that. You now gain, not convert. Notice the difference in the words. Words matter here. You gain 50% of your food income as mana, not convert. Gain, meaning you do not lose any food right now. That is very, very, very strong. So in addition to permanently having 3 Grace on pretty much any unit that matters, not summon crappers, on any unit that matters, we get 3 stacks of Grace pretty much indefinitely, and any of our units that matter will pretty much sit at 5 stacks of Strengthened. Even if your enemies are weakening you, it's pretty easy to just keep that global 5 Strengthened up. Lots of people will use combat summons, lots of people will try to do that, and it just becomes very, very powerful to just wipe out those little dudes and get a stack of Strengthened on them. Now, going back 1 second here, I did remember one little small detail. Plants do control when we talk about items for a second, although again, items will be rebalanced at some point, hopefully. Plants, liquids, their bonuses, hopefully will get rebalanced. I think liquids will still end up being stronger. I think snow will end up being stronger no matter what. But there is one particular item, only one, that actually, unfortunately, plants do control. Now that is Animate Flora. Animate Flora was buffed recently, and it is really strong. This Floral Stinger went from 70 HP to 80 HP. He had his damage buffed up a little bit by making a lot of it into Blight. They did remove the slow, but it seems they added it back as a rebalancer. But Animate Floor is an item you can make with plants. It's a 0 AP, turns anything into a Floral Stinger. Floral Stinger then lasts 3 turns. It's quite tanky. I mean, 80 HP is tanky. It's frustrating. Now, this does not count as an animal, so it will not get your Tome of Vigor buffs, but it will get your Mighty Meek. We revealed Mighty Meek. Yeah, okay. It will get your Mighty Meek. It will get all those other buffs, so it will be really good. Now, plants do control making items with this, so that's the one downside. The one single downside of not going with plants, but I assure you, it literally cannot compensate. I actually wonder when they changed him back to 24 movement speed. They pushed him to 32, and then I think they pushed him back to 24, because Animate Flora is a free action movement. Horn God gets it, items get it. I think it was seen as maybe a little bit too strong, but you can still run up, and with Mighty Meek, Poisonous Spores, it does hit pretty hard. But again, I just don't think that that's worth sitting on plants. It's just not even, especially, you have to remember, Primal Mammoth gives you Death Magic. Death Magic is how we get this build to go infinite late game. So Vision of Destiny's infinite healing, well, I shouldn't say infinite, it's a lot of healing on our units that matter, makes it quite difficult to remove those tanky spider boys. And then Fabled Hunters, pretty good. Okay. Let's move on. Tome Beasts. Do we need to talk about Tome Beasts? We're obviously going to be going it, but let's talk about why, I guess, for a second. Call Wild Animal was changed. You now get 3 to 4 choices. It will all be elephants. I promise you it will be all elephants. We need lots of mana. That's why we like the Mark of Nature. That's why we like the Frost Giant. Because you can get ice spiders on this, and they will show up, I think, 13% of the time. It's not a lot. It's quite low. And it's quite frustratingly low, in fact. If I had any choice, I would always make it so there would be 3 choices, and one of the choices is always the 80 mana option, but that's not how the game works. If you do see an ice spider, it will be 80 extra mana, so 140 total mana to summon. That's pretty brutal, and your ice spider will die in auto-resolve anyway. Despite being one of the tankiest units that you can get at that stage of the game, it will still somehow die. I'm not quite sure how the AI manages to do that, but Call Wild Animal is very good. Comes in with only 60 mana, so you can get, if nothing else, you're probably going to spam elephants, polar bears, and these units are tier 2, so they're pretty tanky. They're pretty cheap. Anyway, you get animals to negative 50% upkeep, basically just freely for existing. Animal Kinship won't affect your Giant Lord, but it will affect zombies. Ironically, zombies are friends of the forest, and it will affect your heroes and lords, and it will affect your wild speakers. Even into the late game, I typically set on 2 wild speakers. Like in an army of 18 units, you want 2, maybe 3 wild speakers. They're tier 2, so a lot of people don't like them, but if you get them to champion rank, they summon a tier 2. And generally speaking, I think that they're fine enough, and it also gives us Stabs of Grace on them, which is useful, and it does just allow us to proc Animal Kinship. Now, what of course is Animal Kinship? You need to read this correctly. I didn't read it correctly until recently, actually. This says specifically, when you are adjacent to a friendly animals, both units get 10% damage and 10% critical hit chance. Read that specifically, both units. This means if you slap a zombie down next to a spider, as a spider attacks, then yes, actually, the spider will get damage from having a friendly friend of the forest zombie next to him. This is good for buffing up. There's a racial transformation that affects non-racial units, which is pretty unique. I don't think there's any other one like that. So this is a way to buff up our non-racial units, our beasts, Beast build is the only non-racial build that, in my opinion, is viable. We got Call of the Wild, Marcus Prey. Marcus Prey is actually pretty good. It's a cheap little 5-mana spell. I think the AI will spam this in battle. At the very least, it will spam your primal heal in battle. Both these spells, I think it loves to use. Try to not get Call of the Wild if at all possible. This is not the greatest spell, and your AI will use this one instead. If you do end up starting the game with Call of the Wild, blame RNG. I really wish the devs, this is me saying again my wishes, I wish the devs would make it so every tome with the summon should start with the summon unlocked. That would improve the RNG of the game substantially. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Just try to get these 4. Wild Speaker, ironically, I tend to build later in the game. It's like the only tier 2 unit I build later in the game. Now, do note that they did get 2 buffs. Conjure Animal puts you into defense mode, which is pretty good. Do not just conjure an animal out there in the wild away from enemies. Do not do that. That will do you no good. You want to run right up to an enemy and conjure right in their face. Then you want to run up other animals right next to the Wild Speaker, because putting him in defense mode, do note he is a support unit, so he will give status resist and magic resist in an AoE around him, and with animal kinship will give damage to people around him. So just keeping like 1 Wild Speaker, 2 Wild Speakers around in your armies is still pretty good. At champion rank, you will summon a tier 2 unit. Tier 2 animals are much better on average than tier 1. Like, the power difference is very large. So if you do get them to champion rank, their output will be much better. Now in auto battle, Wild Speakers are headless chickens. They don't know what to do. They're complete morons, so don't really rely on them early. Do note also, you might be attracted to the Wild Speaker's special ability. Do not be attracted to that. It's not appealing at all. This will not make them sexually more attractive. Caretaker is useless. All animals have reduced upkeep by default, and that's negative 25. At level 4, you get negative 20% upkeep on animals. Shepherd, Druid, that's another negative 20%. This Caretaker will more often than not do absolutely nothing. This is pointless. Nothing more to say. This is pointless. Literally pointless. Okay.
Choose your first.
Tome of the Beasts. Good choice. Try to not get Call of the Wild. You kind of have to get the vibe of it. If you do like doing auto battles, which I do like doing, because battles can get long and tedious, and sometimes I just like playing out a game and just going click, 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 click. At any rate, yes, Marcus Prey is pretty good. The primal spell is pretty good. If you just feed the AI mana, which is pretty easy to do with this build, it will auto battle pretty successfully. Now, why is Marcus Prey pretty good? Distracted means anything hitting this unit is a flanking attack. That's outrageously good. Any shield unit is screwed. 25% more damage is really good. You also have to remember, this is important, once you get to level 4, every beast in your leader's army, your lord's army, will have 1 defense, 1 resist, and flanker. Shocking! Wow! Every unit targeting this is a flanking attack, and all your animals have flanker, and they get 3 sundered defense. This means you drop the hammer of God on them, and they start taking like 20 damage from even early game animals hitting them repeatedly. I assure you, it's absolutely devastating. Okay. Wildlife Sanctuary does have 1 quirk. Once again, I implore the devs. There's a lot of randomness with this build that I wish would be removed, but one thing in particular that does annoy me is that the Wildlife Sanctuary allows you to get, let's go to animals right here. We don't care about anything that's not a spider. This is basic a spider build, but it will allow you to get the Vampire Spider Hatchling and the Dread Spider Hatchling. It will not allow you to recruit Hunting Spider or Ice Spider. That's quite annoying. Okay, now what I often end up doing in the mid game is I will send out 5 stacks of Dread Spider Hatchlings. Once they're buffed up by some different things, Dread Spider Hatchlings, they do pretty decent. Vampire Spider Hatchlings, they got that 55 HP, low resistance, low defense. That's no good. Obviously, as I have mentioned, the quality difference between tier 1 and tier 2 is outrageous. I mean, look at the difference here, right? And so You can only summon these ones from the Wildlife Sanctuary. It's quite frustrating. Now, I do think that given the option, summon nothing but vampire spider hatchlings on your maybe second, third army. Once you have Shepherd unlocked for 20 HP, once you have the level 4, go Nature Affinity, grab the animal buffer, they get 1 defense, 1 resist. You can make them decently tanky and they'll live through battle. And if you do get them evolved, the Vampire Spider Matriarch and Dread Spider Matriarch do have 2 unique effects that you might not notice. Their actual stats themselves, they're just a generic tier 3 fighter unit, not really that amazing on their own. So why do I like them? Spawn Hatchling is unlimited. They spawn a Hatchling Spider with full AP, and it has no combat summon effect. It stays on the board forever. So as long as you use a turn, the Vampire Spider Matriarch and the Dread Spider Matriarch will give you 2 units. As you might imagine, in a Mighty Meek build, getting extra tier 1 units, they hit like trucks, and they're quite good. Now, these are obviously your bread and butter, the Hunter Spider Matriarch and the Ice Spider Matriarch. A lot of people ask me about Phase Beast. Let me be really clear. Phase Beast is weirdly bad compared to any other tier 4 spider. Phase Beast is 105-4. He only has at 5 defense because he's ethereal, which comes, unfortunately, with spirit weakness, which is not a good weakness to have. If you compare this to any other tier 4 animal, you can notice a very large difference in the stats. This difference is very large, weird, comes out of nowhere. Anyway, the animal that you get from a tome is literally weaker than the world animals. If the devs actually want him to be good, I think they would have to buff him to 6 defense, so he's 4-4 by default, which is average for a tier 4 unit, and 120 HP. That would actually make him potentially worth getting, which would allow Stormcrow to maybe do an Astral Nature build. Maybe? Can't say for sure. At any rate, yeah, let's move on. Frost Giant King. Why do we like him? Okay, I mean, this should be pretty obvious here. Apparently, actually, I can select Giant King, but I can't show you. Okay, Frost Giant, in addition to Primal Mammoth getting 3 production per province that you control, so effectively 3 production per population, Frost Giant then gives you 2 mana per population, because it's 2 per tile, as long as you're on snow. But this guy gives us the ice or snow runesteel, which allows us to then turn provinces into snow. So every province will always have 3 production, every province will always have 2 mana. 3 production, 2 mana per population, that's quite strong. As we get Mark of Astral, we also turn food into more mana. So once you get that Mark of Nature completed, we will basically have unlimited mana. It's pretty common with this build. We don't really care about mana, and we will have 1 conduit from the Primal Mammoth conduit, which is just outrageously good. We do build that SPI. It's really a good one. We will have that. We can get down to the tier 3 mana building. What is that called? Monolith, which gives you 20 mana. Generally, you can just build that if you're bored at the end of your cities, like if they have nothing else to build. But you're gonna end most games 4, 5, 6, 7,000 mana without really cracking a sweat anyway. It doesn't really matter. As for Frost Giant himself, how you want him to look, how you want him to be, that's really on you. The way I did it to kind of give him that, like, I'm a giant in the north is cold. I gave him the new Pantheon outfit that is actually supposed to be for the Undead Titan, but I thought it kind of fit for a Frost Giant dude. You can try to go with other things, but I couldn't really find any other one that really looked the same at any rate. I mean, you could maybe go with this, but at any rate, I thought this was best, so we just went with that. Okay, what class did we go with? Warlock. I will show you why Warlock is good in a second here. We went the Shepherd Ambition. Now this one could be a quite frustrating one. You will not get ice spiders. They are not common. If you do decide to go with the vampire spiders from your home base, that's frustrating as well because they only have 32 movement speed. You can put those on your secondary stacks who can clear slower, and you can put those on regular rulers who have 2 XP per turn. Now, again, that is the advantage of going with the champion. He can get the 2 XP per turn, and he can get the bonus healing to keep those vampire spiders alive between fights, keep them healing between fights. That's pretty good. But overall, Frost Giant, this is his only downside. It's pretty easy to activate Druid from Shepherd. That, of course, gives you the base upkeep production, animal, plant, and elementals. The 20 hit points, this is what allows you to start keeping those animals alive. The elephants will start having like 120 HP with a little bit of vet and Druid. So the elephant spam works, but it doesn't give you the repeatable evolve or promote a unit. That's a bit frustrating. It is hard to do that because, simply put, your frost spiders love death. They crave death, and you only get them on average once every like 6 or 7 turns. It's frustrating. I implore the devs to make a change because frost spiders are already 140 mana. I think it would be fair if you could summon them just consistently. Okay. Then let's talk about Warlock, because Warlock is quite good. We're gonna talk about Warlock, then we'll come back to the rest of the tomes. But let's go talk about Warlock for a second, because this one might be a bit confusing for people, particularly because Warlock is new, and we do need to make sure that people understand then what is Warlock doing for this build. Well, okay, number one, we will be going Mighty Meek. I'll talk about that later. And Warlock has a very unique aspect to him that synergizes absolutely perfectly well with this build. But what is that unique aspect? Okay, so load. There we go. He can summon down 2 zombies at the start of a battle, and these will be permanent zombies. That is through the always take this one right here. Bam. Okay, we will take right here, Undead Retinue. Summon 2 zombies at the start of battle. Okay. Sorry, I got the sniffles. What you do here, Undead Retinue, you summon 2 zombies. Now these will be fully enchanted, fully racial transformed, everything. These zombies can be used to sit behind your animals and buff them up. Zombies are the greatest friends of the forest. They can also just be used with Mighty Meek to do a lot of damage, and they can be used when you are clearing to get a very powerful clear. We also then have here Transfer Life, which is pretty annoying, I'm sure, for your enemies. You don't have to be Ascended Hunter, don't worry about that. That has nothing to do with the build, I just chose that. Transfer Life is pretty good because you can just heal allies. That's pretty good for keeping your dudes alive. Reclaiming attacks heals allies, shockingly. Healing your animals, keeping them alive, pretty good. Over here we got Raise Dead. Raise Dead is pretty useful because we can use Raise Dead to deny enemy corpses, get zombies potentially back to life, or just raise enemies to just have stronger battles. I like going Raise Dead because over here we have unstable summons. Summon units get Decaying Dissolution. Whenever a summon goes kaboom, it deals 15 blight damage and 2 decaying to all enemies around it. We will be going Decaying Blades, so we just stack decaying in giant stacks. It's quite frustrating for your enemies to always be decaying, because animals into the late game can start being a little bit lower damage. Can be. I mean, sometimes they can be quite high damaging. Depends on if your opponents are going with a high damage build or not. At any rate, Decaying Dissolution is just really good at denying healing to enemies in mass. Claim Soul here is then another way to deny enemies bodies, because Claim Soul, if you kill an enemy, now in previous patches, Claim Soul bypassed Steadfast. So long as you killed an enemy, it came back under your control. Now if the enemy has a Steadfast mechanic, it will resist it. So Claim Soul is not a gimme, but Claim Soul is still very strong. Now why is it very strong? Because on the first affinity here, on the first affinity we're going to go Nature, and we're going to grab the Animal Buffer. Okay, so we buff all animals. Over here we're going to grab, once again, the Nature affinity, and we're going to grab the ability that summons 2 tier 2 animals. Oh, Mighty Meek, 2 Mighty Meek animals. And you can summon it right under enemies. Yeah, that's pretty good. So those will get the Decaying Dissolution, and if you kill an enemy with Claim Soul, it will reset all ability cooldowns, even the abilities that can only be used once per battle. So you can potentially summon 2 animals, Claim Soul, summon 2 animals. You can see how that might get frustrating for your enemies. Now, in addition to having some effects that can deny enemies bodies here and here, denying enemy bodies can be quite useful into the late game, because there's 3 different tier 5 tomes with perma resummoning, I should say body reviving. There's also reviving and a lot of different things, so that's quite good. Now over here we can get Blood Pact. You can go with the Hex Pact route. It's fine. This route I found to not really be that important. Once you get to Claim Soul, I just end up buffing all my dudes. But if you're going a Champion Governor, you can't go Blood Pact. On a Champion, I don't think they quite have the damage that a Frost Giant would do. So I would probably just go Hex Pact. Hex Pact can give you some debuffs here, which are just going to end up being kind of useful because... Yeah, I mean, I think when you go the Hex Pact route, you do a bit more damage, or sorry, you do a bit less damage. Blood Pact just gives you that 20% damage boost. You can go Curse, and you can run around, and you can just apply more AoE decaying and stuff like that. But the end of the day, if I was going with the Champion Governor, I go down to Claim Soul, and then for the most part, I would probably just end up trying to buff the animals in my stack with XP, with the 10 more HP and status resist, so I can stay alive a bit more. That also gives you the healing, maybe even defensive stuff like that. And then maybe I would go down here for Hex Pact, just maybe to try to slap onto their heroes in large battles, so maybe we can try to morale them out, because we're not doing a morale build. If you're not doing a morale build, lots of times people just won't try to get anti-morale against you. It's just, I like the Blood Pact route because you can link to an animal. You can give them Resurgence and Lifesteal, which is quite good for battles. Culling Magic, if you are a Giant King, +1 blight damage per negative status effects. This does allow, especially once you get a tier 5 weapon, this does allow you to crash a good chunk of damage, so you can turn a Warlock into a pretty decent damage. It's a bit weird. Warlock is really good for these special rulers because Blood Pact, on the special rulers, the Eldritch Sovereign in particular, Warlock is really, really good because the special rulers, like Giant King, they have the Obelisk Crash, or if you're going Eldritch Sovereign, they have all their special abilities, so they can get very high damage. Champions don't really have the same thing. They can maybe go with a Wand of Blizzards, which is not even half nearly as good, but this one, Culling Magic, attacks and debuff abilities get blight damage per negative status effects, so that's pretty good. If you do end up down here in Infectious Affliction, this will actually be quite frustrating for enemies because Afflicted means that all your dudes give them debuffs, and Diseased reduces all their resistance. So that's good. Now the disease might eventually spread back to your animals, but if you're summoning spamming enough, it doesn't really do that big a deal. So at any rate, the most important thing here is Claim Soul, double zombie. Sorry, that's double zombie. If you do set your rulers, get a second Warlock, actually, then you get 4 zombies at the start of battles. So that allows you to clear wonders. 4 Mighty Meek zombies actually lets you clear wonders quite easily. Now, I do want to say one thing. You can do a janky little trick here where you reset your skills at the start and get rid of Conjure Animated Frost Sword. I would keep that for the start of the game. It's pretty fine. Later in the game, do a reset once you have more levels and you have more affinity to take what you want. I would not use Conjure Animated Frost Sword. Why? It doesn't get enchantments. It ends up being useless. It's not helpful at all. I've even gone down to the Animated Ice Glaive. Still doesn't get enchantments. Doesn't get Mighty Meek. Doesn't get anything. It's totally useless come late game. I mean, it gets Decaying Dissolution, that's it. So, yeah. Warlock, we like Warlock. Zombies are friends of the forest, and generally speaking, it's just pretty strong. Just tons of synergy with the build. Just tons and tons and tons and tons of synergy. So then what tomes are we actually going to go? Because you're probably wondering, okay, how do we get through the tomes? How do we do all this? Okay, to the surprise of nobody, we're picking up Tomes of Beast into Tome Cryomancy. Everybody acts shocked. Wow, Tome Cryomancy in another build. Well, research SPIs are quite good. Frostblades, as you might imagine, as we have lots of ability to freeze or slow enemies, Frostblades is still good at 10% more damage, and that's 4 frost damage, -2 physical damage. This allows these units to do a lot of magic damage, which bypasses defenses. This will be a more magic damage oriented build. Some builds go pure physical damage, some builds go pure magic damage spamming. Knight builds, Tyrant Knight builds, those will generally have a lot more physical damage just because the base units do a lot more physical damage. This build, the Ice Spider Matriarchs are already doing a lot of frost damage. Once you combo Frostblades on that, they will be doing like 50-50. Now, of course, Frost Arrows can also be kind of decent because we will be summoning Animate Flora whenever we're given the chance, either by our Horned God if we do manage to recruit him from the Rally of Lieges, or if we do decide to go later on for that Tome, or if we somehow get plants and we get an item for it, or if we just RNG the item for it. Anyway, Frost Arrow, this helps Slithers. Slithers are a really good summon. Ironically, if you ever see a Slither in your list, take it. They're really good and they do not die in auto battle. They're quite survivable. They love to not die. They're the opposite of Frost Spiders. Frost Spiders crave the death. Slithers crave not death. So Frost Arrows does help there. Anyway, Frost Arrows, Frost Blades, Blizzard, these are all good things. If you do go Ice Coffin, I would recommend not. Actually, your Marcus Prey as well as your Primal Spell will generally be better. If you give your AI Ice Coffin, it will do stupid things. Okay. Tome of Revelry, shockingly. I know, I'm shocked too. Tome of Revelry in your build? Wow, I never, okay. I love Tome of Revelry. So, Tome of Revelry is really good. Revelry's Heart, I can often just not cast. I mean, you only have like 4 racial units, including your heroes in a battle. I guess zombies could get Revelry's Heart. We don't really care. Now, we do go to Tome of Revelry for 2 things. Blood Fury Weapons, because this does actually affect animals. So if animals ever get a kill, they get morale. That's one way to try to soft counter morale builds. Won't totally counter them, but if your Ice Spider Matrix are killing, then they're getting morale. Okay, but we do like this 2 damage. It is physical damage, and we do like the aesthetic as well. Ice Spiders with blood on their little mandibles? There we go. Mandibles is really cool looking. Do turn off any of your other racial transformations, or I should say enchantments. Do turn off the aesthetic, so Blood Fury Weapon takes priority, and you get Ice Spiders with bloody mandibles. It looks cool. Okay. Revels of Blood is a fine siege enchantment. It's fine. At least having 1 decent siege enchantment, and we will have unlimited mana come mid-game. It's 1 decent siege enchantment. It allows you to pile drive through sieges without much difficulty. But also, Revels of Carnage. To the shock of nobody, Revels of Carnage works really well in a build that's trying to level up their dudes. Carnival of Flesh is also an SPI. You'll notice it has Chaos Affinity, so its SPI is terrible. Tome of the Beacon. Once again, Tome of the Beacon is awkward because we only really want like 1 thing from it. In this particular case, at least Tome of Revelry, we wanted 2 things from it. Tome of Cryomancy, we wanted 2 things from it. But Tome of the Beacon, we got 1 thing from it. Is it really? Yes, it is that good. You could try to go for a build that accents your tier 4 units more. So maybe you could go with a Tome of, you know, for art, or you could go with artisan weapons instead, maybe. But I think Mighty Meek has crazy synergy with the build. Particularly, it just allows all those dudes being conjured by Tome of Vigor later on. It gives you so much pressure from those tier 1 units. And do remember, those tier 3 spiders summon down tier 1 units for free. So this Mighty Meek is just really, really, really good. So what does Mighty Meek do? Any tier 1 or tier 2 unit, do note that change, gets 1 spirit damage per unit tier of the target. Heroes always count as tier 5. Yes, this makes Mighty Meek give you 5 damage on your tier 1s and 2s if they're hitting a hero. That's a lot of damage. Yeah, that adds up pretty quickly. Also gives them a bit of status resist, which can be helpful because they get 0 by default. And this means your zombies, if you're doing double Warlock opener, these means those 4 zombies all get Mighty Meek, and you'll get the zombie beatdown. Animate Flora gets affected by this. Your double tier 2 animal summon from your hero gets affected by this. I just find Mighty Meek to work really, really, really well. Conjured Divine Beacon. Before we get to Tome of Vigor, which is literally the next tome, unfortunately, Conjure Divine Beacon is quite good. In a pinch, Conjure Divine Beacon does allow you to get some morale. It does last for 3 turns, it sits in the back. On deploy, which is one of the big changes, and then every turn afterward, should be for 3 turns, might bug out and not give you the final one. You get 5 morale and 15 healing. In a pinch, if you're running into issues with morale and you need something, and you're not on Tome of Paradise, Conjure Divine Beacon is a totally fine combat spell to just slap down, so at the very least that your main units are going to stay healthy and on the board and not routing. So Conjure Divine Beacon, it's one of those in a pinch type deals. After that, I pretty much just go with whatever. You know, it's just, at this point we might just be using the combat and the enchantments for our scouts. Like it don't matter. It don't matter. Tome of Vigor is outrageously good for beast build. Shocking. I know, really. The beast tome is good for beast builds. Anyway, empowered beasts is obviously what allows animals to scale, dealing 20% more damage. Wow. 10 more hit points and Demolisher. So Demolisher allows you to break walls in cities, which can become quite a big deal because your beasts don't fly. And even when you defend cities, you might often want to break your own walls on the first turn so that you can more properly leave your walls and ambush the enemies outside of it. So Demolisher is really good. Decreased number of units in formation means you'll often just have the one beast. Even your tier 3 beast will be the one beast. Your slithers will turn into the one beast. So empowered beasts is quite good. Even if you have some slithers that you summoned that you keep into late game, this empowered beast will have one slither and his ranged attack will deal like upwards of like 30, 35 damage. Like it'll be a lot, okay? So empowered beasts is the really good one. You can go super growth to get 10 HP to your heroes. I generally do that. It's fine. It's just sometimes hard to get the global casting points for it. Cold Greater Animal is fine. Now, if you are using Cold Greater Animal, I do recommend you use it in a province that is only ice snow. Only ice snow. When you do that, your odds of getting a Ice Spider Matriarch are very high. I don't know the math behind it, but it's like a 50-50 to get an Ice Spider Matriarch. That's pretty good. I wish they just made it a 100% chance and just made it cost more mana then to maybe compensate it. Like just make it cost 100 bonus mana and you get an Ice Spider Matriarch 100% of the time. So a tier 4 summon at 150 global casting, but it's 250 mana instead of 200. You have to remember these are non-racial units and you can't really be going an Astral Tome for this. I mean, you are going to be going a Nature Tome. So you know what I mean? Like, I think that would be fair, but that's not how it works right now. You're going to 50-50 it a bit, which is unfortunate. Tome of the Wild is outrageously good. Like, holy crap, is this good. To get buffed, it's way tankier, coming with 4 defense, 2 resist. Tome of the Wild summons a beast automatically. Automatically will summon a beast every single turn, and it summons it on deploy. You do get 3 beasts now instead of 3 beasts. It's just one of them comes on deploy. So it works over 2 turns instead of 3 turns, but I didn't even do that together. It does work now over 2 turns instead of 3 turns, but that first turn is an automatic deploy. Now, the way I use Totem of the Wild, because you do get an automatic deploy, once I've engaged the enemies and I have lots of summons within their formations and lots of spiders in their formation, I'll generally use Totem of the Wild like right behind them so that I run another summon in behind them. This puts your enemies in a lose-lose situation. They could eat another retaliating hit, which with Mighty Meek is going to hit decently hard, and they can, once we go Tome of the Cycle, they're going to have Blades of Decay. Then they can run to the Totem of the Wild, and they can try to kill it with 80 HP, with your Wizard Tower giving it more HP on deploy as well. I think it gets upwards of like 100 HP. I think it's 100 HP. This is going to be quite annoying for enemies to have to break out of a fight, run to the totem and try to kill it. And then remember, even if they do that, you have a summon on the board as well. So if they don't kill it, you get a second summon and a third summon, and this can be quite overwhelming. And do remember, you can just summon it next turn, and 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 next turn. And if they do try to kill the summons, they do try to kill them. Eventually you can set up a mass rejuvenation that just brings all these animal summons back to life. Quite frustrating, I'm sure, for enemies. Unleash the Beast is bad. I don't know. Unleash the Beast would have to be buffed to affect like one animal and then the closest animal. But we already get 5 strengthen from Mark of Nature anyway, so we don't care. 5 bolster defense and Berserk. Why would we want Berserk? Bolster defense is fine. You're effectively giving 1 unit 5 bolster defense for an entire turn of summoning for 40 casting points. Holy crap, this could be AoE2 and I still might not cast it. Anyway, yeah, first turn, Totem of the Wild, then 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 Totem of the Wild. Okay. Wide Tome of Cycles then. Okay, we got 3 reasons for Tome of Cycles. Number 1, if you do with liquids, managed to cast an overcharge item. I have to show you guys overcharge, so just give me 1 second. There is a new thing, a reward, because liquids are obviously really, really cool and needed better items. Honestly, I think they ought to rename plants at a certain point, because if you look in game, plants are quite magical. Plants control some of the most magical magic in the game, right? They generate the most mana of any build, but when you look in game, all the plant items are called like haste berries. Why not call them like ultra mana berries and casting juice and magical melons? I don't know, like plants, the actual units are super magical and like quite capable casters that can literally warp reality to delete a unit from existence. And then plant items are like, I'm a berry, just a regular berry. Anyway, if you do get the overcharge cast item, that's an astral dew and a haste berry. If you either RNG it or if you manage to find a haste berry and cast it, it's not too hard to run down south and find one haste berry and slap an outpost on it. You get overcharge cast. Now, what does overcharge do for combat enchantments? You can cast another spell. Oh, that's a big deal. Why is that a big deal? Okay, because in the past, there was really no way to get down to your Tome of Cycles to actually cast Parting Gifts. Using an entire turn to cast Parting Gifts was basically impossible. There's no real way to use an entire turn on this. It was not a good deal. Now you can. So you can go Parting Gifts, and then you can still use Totem of the Wild. If we have Death Magic, this will basically not really affect us because we have Death Magic. You could cast, because you are a Giant King, you'll have more Giant King crafting juice. You can craft some items with global casting on them before you get Death Magic. You can cast for 50 of the super casting juice. You can cast a plus 20 global casting item, and you can build like 4 of those and slap those on all your heroes, and you can get through your casting threshold before you get Death Magic. That is one way to do it. If you do not have a lot of global casting, you don't have Death Magic, I would just recommend not casting Parting Gifts at all. Not a big deal. But okay, so why Tome of Cycles? Druid of the Cycle, if you are fighting a steadfast spamming build, Druid of the Cycle, quite magical super plant, has the unique ability to literally warp someone out of existence. Cycles end. This ends an enemy. The animation, they literally just get warped out. They are deleted. They are gone. This will bypass steadfast. They do not care. It doesn't matter that you can't die. You are ended. Which is why, again, why are plants non-magical berries? Like, plants literally have some of the most powerful... Okay, anyway, not going to complain about it anymore. So, we do have 2 things that the Druid of the Cycle, if you do decide to go with the Druid of the Cycle route. I didn't in my last game, but you can slop like 1 or 2 into your build. They've got 2 good things. Cycle's End, you throw the Druid of the Cycle behind your plant summons. Enemies generally don't want to run past to hit them and then just hit a bunch of retaliatory strikes. Then next turn just get surrounded and beat down and killed. It's pretty easy to just keep this guy alive. Okay, so we got 2 things here. 1, Cycle's End bypasses Steadfast. Pretty good way to remove these tanky builds sitting on the front line. As we did mention, if an enemy resists Frozen, which will be like 90% of the time, you'll afflict them with status vulnerability from your primal Mammoth special effect. So generally, enemies that have been hit a lot will have a status vulnerability on them. Now, that allows you to do Cycle's End because it has a chance, slight chance. I think it's 60%, but you can get that to be, I think it's 60%, maybe 90% if they're at 1 HP. Anyway, once you do it, it's a pretty good chance. Okay. It's a possibility, don't need to do it. Blooming Projectiles, if you do have some skirmishers, if you do have some slithers or units like that still around, Blooming Projectiles will give them 10% more damage against decaying units. It's decent, it's fine, it's alright, not blowing my mind. Blades of Decay is a big one. Automatic decay from every single unit, even summons on enemies. As you might imagine, this allows plants to overcome heal spam builds which could otherwise counter you, because heal spam builds, plants, animals do end up having a bit lower damage, even with Mighty Meek, even with Enchant. They don't have those racial transformations to really pump them up, right? So they can, in long fights, suffer a bit. But they won't suffer a bit if every enemy is 4 stacks of decay. And remember, we're hitting them with status vulnerability, we're hitting them with frozen, we're hitting them with decay. Even if they have cleanses, most full cleanses are now single target, and the AoE cleanses heal, or I should say they strip maybe 1 or 2. Only Staves of Grace strips all, and a lot of people will not be using an actual support unit with Staves of Grace, and if they are, it's summon up to them and beat their ass. So Blades of Decay can be quite frustrating. Over long fights, it will generally start winning the fight. Okay, that leads us to Cycle of Seasons, which did see another change. As you might imagine, global casting in this build is very limited, but we really do not have ways to increase it, unfortunately. Cycle of Seasons can be put on any city now. Your city, their city, any city. It's not the strongest spell, but over the course of long fights, if we are fighting tanky enemy builds, it will start helping us. Enemies sustain 10 damage. Generally, this will just proc their Armors of Grace, and you just hit the Grace. It's fine. It could end up actually being annoying and detrimental that, you know, any unit you're not hitting actively on that turn will actually end up healing from it, but it's fine. All friendly units become 1 strengthened. That is somewhat helpful sometimes, not really. All friendly units heal 10 is helpful. All enemies become 1 weakened. Generally helpful, but strengthened is pretty easy to come by these days. At any rate, what do we want from here? We want Blooming Projectiles, Blades of Decay, Cycle of Seasons, Parting Gifts if you can. If you need Druid of the Cycle, you can grab it. I don't know if it's a him or her or it. Yeah, probably an it, right? I don't know. Do plants have sexes? It is a plant. I don't know. Anyway, you cycles end on people. Shocking. I know, once again, Tome of Prosperity. You never saw it coming. Why Tomes of Prosperity if we already get Global Grace? Because Blessed Armors is still good anyway. This does help us turn 1. Before any of our units start dying, this helps us get Grace, which helps us keep our units alive. 2 resistance is quite good. This does affect spiders. It's one of the only ways to make spiders tankier. Well, all animals really, but we care mostly about our matriarchs. Our tier 3 and tier 4 matriarchs are really good. Other good ones are actually White Wolf and Dire Bear, if you do get those. White Wolf does a good chunk of hunk of damage, and Dire Bear also does a good chunk of hunk of damage. Those ones are pretty good. Actually, I could, real quick, let me just look at the animals to tell you guys which ones are good, because, yeah, I know, shocking. Out of tier 1, there's really not many good tier 1 animals. They're kept pretty weak so that they don't destroy you. Realistically speaking, you're going to want to try to get things like Young Caustic Worm, because it does evolve. Infernal Puppy also does evolve if you can get him. Vampire, Spider Hatchling, all spiders evolve. All of them, you don't need to memorize that. They all evolve unless it's already called a matriarch. Into tier 2, they're all generally similar in power level. I don't believe you can summon Celestial Griffin. If you could, this thing would be quite funny. But Ape Escape here is decent enough. He has Frenzy in the early game before Frenzy. Before we get Mark of Nature, he's pretty good. I don't believe you can get Griffin either. But the any tier 2 spiders are premium. Those are like your big bucks. Brown Bear is fine, but actually I believe Polar Bear is literally just better. Primal Bear, where are you at, Polar Bear? There we go. Yeah, you can see it. Polar Bear is literally just Primal Bear with Arctic Walk, which we will give them anyway, but he also gets 4 Frost Resist. So Polar Bear helps you clear the Frost Zone, which will generally have a lot of Frost Resist in it. Polar Bear is quite good. As we start looking into tier 4, what are your good units to try to get into tier 3, tier 4? Well, out of tier 3, any of the Spider Matriarchs are good. Gored Tusk Matriarch is fine. It's fine. This was a lot better before Mark of Nature. Now, if you get them early, it's fine. Because you can also do Violent Gorging, which is relevant into the late game. Like if you have a legendary Gored Tusk Matriarch, I would keep them around. The only problem is their Charge Strike is not very good. It only 21 damage. I think that's done intentionally to compensate Maternal Rage, but it does mean they're not going to scale the greatest in the late game. Now, you do, of course, on your affinity chart, do notice on your nature affinity, although it is super bugged right now, which is so annoying. On your nature affinity, you do have the Spirit Wolf summon, and it does get the ability to, it always revives itself if you win a battle. That currently doesn't work a lot of the times, but why is it so good then? It is a special effect on it. So long as it is alive and in a battle, all other animals get 1 resist, 1 defense. That affects your summons, makes your entire board way tankier. So if you can keep that special Spirit Wolf alive, then you go a bit crazy. It's quite strong. It's quite very strong. Okay, so keep that guy alive, but he will die in auto resolve. You won't notice it, and then he won't come back to life. It's quite frustrating. I really wish they would fix that. Saber Wolf is very unique and ironically not too bad. Why is that? He gets a unique ability here that is base physical ranged movement single shot. Now that physical range is a little bit odd, but that does still stack with Tome Revelry. Its buff works with that. Ice arrows, it does work with that. And later on, Force of Nature does work with that. On paper, not that tanky of a unit, but this dude running around can pounce at range into an enemy support, proccing all these effects, and it is single shot. So it's 4 damage from Tome Revelry, 2 damage from Frost Arrows. So he has got a good chance to slow enemies, and it's not going to do like amazing damage, but it might keep pace with Melee Strike. He doesn't get Mighty Meek, but it's not a bad ability. At any rate, you can run up, pounce onto an enemy support, and it leaves you 1 AP to then hit them with the Melee Strike. It's a pretty decent damage, 16 damage Melee Strike. Not the most amazing unit, but it actually is kind of unique and cool. You literally cannot get the Pestilence Crocodile. A lot of people have asked me. It is not in the list. You cannot get it. Caustic Worm is not very good. It has a legitimate problem. It does 24 charge damage. That's fine. It does apply automatic center defense. Its stats are just not all there. 32 movement speed isn't really that good either. Caustic Eruption, honestly, no. Just no. You're gonna want mostly to have tier 4 units anyway. If you ever get Wyverns, they're fine as well, because they're flying, they keep up with people, they get a range shot. Again, Tome Revelry, this does apply to that. It is a single shot. Generally, this build would do fine. You do have to remember, we do have that Tome of Cycles, so he can apply two shots of Decay at range. Does have a 3-turn cooldown, so you then have to run into melee, but they're fine. Overall, they're fine. Unicorns, Nightmares, these guys are fine as well, mostly because they have this phase ability. Then they have the Charge Strike. They're also 48 movement speed. They're totally fine. They're pretty rare. I only got 1 unicorn the entire last game, and I was like, nay, the holy unicorn. I like them. They do decent damage. Run up, charge a unit. I mean, you can see on their resists, it's like they're not too tanky. So once again, it's like if you get them, they're fine. If you don't get them, once again, we're mostly relying on the vampires. Sorry, not vampires. The spiders. Spiders are your primo bucks. Yeah, spiders, any spider is your primo spider. Once you go into tier 4, okay, Phase Beast, useless, don't care. Infernal Juggernaut, he's fine. He does have some problems here. This is melee single shot, not base. Kind of frustrating, that one, not base. So that effect into the late game. Force of Nature will buff it. It will also be buffed by Tome of Vigor. At the end of the day, it's just not going to scale that well. Charge Strike does scale decently. It does have the displace and replace effect. He's fine, but these, Infernal Fiend, Infernal Fiend. -4 Frost and Spirit, okay. Infernal Juggernaut, he's fine. Anything I say is fine. What I mean is you really don't want him, but you could keep him around if you have nothing better. So what's not merely fine, but actually good? Dire Bear, look at this motherfucker. Okay, 120 health, decent enough defenses here. 18 damage fighter. Oh my god, that will stack up so much damage so quickly. Overwhelm. Defense mode is becoming more and more popular as more people find ways to end their turns in defense mode. This does pretty good into defense mode. Obviously, shocking, I know. White Wolf. Why White Wolf? Okay, has less HP, but look at that defense difference. Oh my god, look at that defense difference right there. Once again, we come up with 18 damage here per hit. Pretty good. Pack Hunter. Every unit adjacent to the target. You can kind of easily get at least 2 units adjacent to the target. You can also get the buff from having a racial unit. Well, I mean, a zombie next to him as well. This guy can do damage. 4 Frost Resist coming from nowhere, totally free. He's got Forest Walk for no reason. 48 movement speed. Bro is hauling. So, White Wolf, I would recommend. They come from the north. You're from the north. That's pretty good. Enfeebling Howl. Oof. Okay, so this does get Force in Nature. This does get buffed by all those % damage buffs. It does apply 2 stacks of Weaken in an AoE. If your enemies do not have a source of Strengthened, running up and doing Enfeebling Howl will generally be better than doing a melee strike. If they're just sitting at permanent 5 Strengthened and they just have more ways to get Strengthened, which isn't that uncommon, generally not that worth doing. But if you open a fight with it and you make an enemy start their turn with 2 Weakened and then they get like Strengthened stacks from there, it can be useful. So White Wolf has a lot of things you can do. Ice Spider Matriarch, absolutely premium, big bucks, huge winner, absolute perfection, literally no weakness. This is the ideal animal right here. Okay. What's the other one? Hunter Spider Matriarch. This is also a slightly ideal animal. Look at these defenses. 4, 5, 115 HP. Look at the other one. Look at the 5, 4, 115 HP. Look at this. It counts as a spider. I don't even know why that needs to be signified, but okay. Underground Camouflage, large target. That's not too good. It's also got Forest Walk, Forest Camouflage. It should have Cave Walk. Yeah, it's got Cave Walk here. 18 damage. Web. Physical ranged, not base, bit frustrating, does get Force of Nature, does get other effects. Automatic slow with a high chance of immobilizing. The automatic slow turns on all your frost blades, by the way, if you didn't know that one. It also gets to jump. You can jump and web in. Oh man, okay, so these two are your primo big bucks. Dire Bear, White Wolf, primo big bucks. Dire Bear is pretty good. White Wolf is like, he's just tankier. Even though he's got 10 less HP, doesn't matter. We're gonna have lots of HP from stuff. Would you rather have 10% damage reduction, or would you rather have 10 HP? You'd rather have 10% damage reduction in any day of the week. Now, if you can get below ground, you can, any of the, I think they're called like cages, cells? God, why can't I remember their name? The jail cells, the underground ones, the silver ones, they will always give you 1 primordial. These are tier 5 class animals. If you can get the Primordial Basilisk, it's over. You win. You can get the Primordial Bloodback, yeah, he's fine. I mean, Primordial Strength, okay. You get a stack of Strength in, doesn't matter. Nature's Might does matter, helps you a little bit. He himself is a shock unit. He will be shockingly good, but Savage Charge is not single shot, which is a bit rough. But it's not single shot, but it does have piercing. So it's like, we do get Hurl Large Boulder. Physical range, not base. Like, he's a class unit. He does actually get enchantments, but they like specifically designed him so he doesn't really get the best enchantments. But look at how tanky this dude is. And Primordial Strength over a bit of time, you can get 1 or 2 stacks of Nature's Might that will add a bit of damage. Primordial Basilisk is just, oh my god, big bucks. Every unit can steal positive status effects. That's ridiculous. Serpentine Curse, that's ridiculous. Doomgaze, oh my god. This is, I mean, we're not going to be buffing battle mages that much in this build for sure, but animals themselves will be getting 20% damage from Tome of Vigor. We can get them more damage off standing next to them. We give them resistance off our affinity thing. If he's ever flanking an enemy, that's big damage. So these guys are class units, but the devs have kind of locked them down a little bit, but we can bypass that because Tome of Vigor just buffs animals directly. So these would buff them even if they were mythic, but most importantly, a lot of our damage enchantments will affect them. So even though we do have Frostblades, we also have Tome of Revelry. We also, I mean, it's fine. Savage Charge is fine, really, right? I do believe it does, yeah, this one does do full AoE, which kind of makes sense why it's not single shot, even though it would be nice. But AoE, we're still, even with Frostblades, we're going to go down to 26 damage. Then we get Tome of Revelry back up to 30 damage. Tome of Vigor up to 36 damage. So it's 36 physical damage, ignoring 50% of their defense. This is going to hit hard no matter what, right? And once we have that Force in Nature, I mean, that's blight damage, but you know, that is crit. So I'm just saying, Savage, if you can get these guys, it will be good. The strengthen is wasted, but you know, every summon stacking up at least +1 blight damage each turn. It won't matter that much, but your big spider dudes, this will help. Now, it is only base attacks, which is frustrating because I do believe that the fire version of it is every attack. For some reason, still low maintenance. Not really sure I understand that one. Primordial Pyre Moth, he does have the rejuvenating flames. He can consume while burning. Primordial hide. I mean, I'm just saying, these guys, you can get them down from the jail. Okay, let's finish up the tomes then and finish up the video. Okay, you saw all these ones. Tome of Paradise. There was really nothing better to pick. Tome of Paradise does allow you to get Garden of Bliss. This is some city stability. We have no synergy at all because we won't have any grassland. We're in the north. But we do get 15 stability. That's good. Our build doesn't have a lot of stability. Then we convert 10% of food into mana. That's kind of pointless because we have infinite mana anyway. But at any rate, we get Exhilarating Pollen to soft counter morale builds, which is nice. We do have Nature's Bounty to give us even more HP, which is pretty frustrating for your enemies at any rate. Blessing of Paradise, if you can find that time to cast it, could be nice, but really not that impactful. By this point, our cities are all done. Fortress of Vines is the best defensive thing in the game. It is almost impossible to fight through a city with Fortress of Vines. Your movement speed is capped at 32. You cannot go higher. Enemies will always be 32 movement speed. This screws up their turns so bad because everyone will be moving faster than 32. You cannot move faster than 32, period. Hasten doesn't count. Nothing counts. Outrageous. Tome of the Goddess of Nature. Force of Nature. You probably understand this. It did get nerfed, but you still get 3 blight damage on every summon. On everything. 3 blight damage on everyone. Critical hit chance on everyone. That's really good. Mass rejuvenation. 40 heal on everything. Then all your dudes revive. Really strong, this one. Okay. Beast build. That's it. Beast build. Really good. Beast build. One of my favorites. You should try it. I think that's the end of the video. I think I explained everything perfectly. So, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for making it to the end. Once again, please make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment. Thank you, everybody. And as always, I hope you all have a great rest of your day.